It was late one night when I first heard the sound. I had just finished a long day sitting around the fire with my friends in a small village on the edge of a jungle in Nigeria. The air was thick and humid, the kind of stillness that only comes when the night settles in. And everything around you feels so quiet that it almost becomes eerie. We were sitting around the fire, laughing, telling stories, normal things, the sort of bonding time you have when you're far away from home and looking for comfort in each other's company. The village we were in was small, tucked away in the folds of a thick forest. It was one of those places that didn't show up on any tourist maps. A quiet, hidden corner of the world that most people had never heard of. The kind of place where the people didn't care much for outsiders, but they accepted us. Mostly because we'd been there for a while, and we weren't trying to be a nuisance. In exchange for their hospitality, we learned about the old tales, the stories of spirits that roamed the land, of ancient curses that bound souls to the earth, and of rituals that could awaken things better left undisturbed. We'd heard it all before, of course. The ghost stories, the legends of vengeful spirits, and the haunted places deep in the jungle. We were skeptical, just like anyone would be. It's easy to dismiss the old stories, the myths and warnings, when you've grown up far away from places like this, in cities filled with lights and noise. We laughed it off, telling each other that there was no way the things in those stories were real. They were just that, stories. Nothing more. But on that particular night, as I sat by the fire and listened to the quiet murmurs of the jungle around us, something changed. At first, it was barely noticeable, a faint rustling sound carried by the wind. It was so soft that I thought I was imagining it. I paused for a moment, trying to listen more closely, but the sound was gone. No one else seemed to notice, and I figured it was just the jungle, the wind playing tricks on my ears. We kept talking, the conversation picking up again, but in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Then it happened again. This time, the whisper wasn't as faint. It was clearer, more distinct, as if someone was speaking in a language I couldn't understand. It was so quiet, so subtle, that I wondered if anyone else could hear it. I glanced around at my friends, but they seemed lost in their own conversations. No one else seemed to notice. I looked back toward the jungle, my gaze scanning the shadows, but nothing was there. It was just the night, still and calm, the fire crackling as the smoke rose into the air. But then it came again, louder this time, almost as if the wind itself was trying to carry the voice closer to me. It wasn't a normal sound. There was something wrong with it. It was low and raspy, a whisper that seemed to curl around the edges of the night itself. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the rustling of leaves. It wasn't any of the usual sounds you hear when you're sitting near the jungle. It was something more. I shifted uncomfortably, suddenly feeling a chill run down my spine. There was an unease in the air, a feeling that I couldn't shake off. It was as if the very fabric of the night had shifted, and something dark was lurking just out of sight. I tried to push the feeling away, telling myself it was just my imagination, that I was tired and the long journey had gotten to me. But the voice kept coming. It wasn't a random sound. It was intentional. It was alive. I could feel it now, almost like the whisper was tugging at me, pulling my attention away from everything else. It was faint, but there was no mistaking it now. It was a voice, one that didn't belong to any of us sitting by the fire. It wasn't one of my friends, and it wasn't the sound of the jungle creatures. It was something else entirely. Something that seemed to be reaching out from the darkness. I glanced around again, my eyes locking with each of my friends, one by one. But no one seemed to notice. They were too busy talking, laughing, unaware of the thing that I was hearing. I wondered if maybe it was all in my head. After all, I was in a place I'd never been before, surrounded by stories of ancient spirits and curses. Maybe it was just the atmosphere, playing tricks on my mind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that. It was real. The voice was real. I stood up, my legs suddenly feeling unsteady, as if the ground beneath me had shifted. I couldn't sit still anymore. The whisper was getting louder, more insistent, and now I could almost make out the words. They were soft, like a faint murmur, but they were there, clear enough to send a chill through my entire body. It wasn't just one voice now. There were others, layered on top of each other, all whispering the same thing. Help me. The words echoed in my mind, each one sending a jolt of fear into my chest. My heart pounded in my ears, and I felt the urge to run. But where would I go? The village was miles away from the nearest town, and the jungle was thick, dark, and full of unknown dangers. I couldn't escape the sound. I couldn't escape the voice. I turned to my friends, my voice trembling as I tried to speak. But the words wouldn't come. I couldn't explain what was happening, not without sounding insane. So instead, I stayed silent, hoping they would feel it too, hoping that somehow they would hear what I was hearing. But nothing happened. The others continued to laugh, completely unaware of the whisper that now surrounded me, filling my ears, crawling under my skin. The voice, faint and fragile as it was, seemed to fill the air itself. It wasn't just in my ears anymore. It was in my head. It was everywhere. I looked back toward the jungle, my eyes scanning the dark silhouettes of the trees. The whispers were growing louder, rising in intensity. They were no longer just whispers, but calls. Calls for help. And they were coming from somewhere in that dark forest. Somewhere deep in the jungle, something was calling to me. I took a step back, my pulse racing. I had to know. I had to understand what this was. But I didn't know if I was ready to face it. The jungle was calling, and I couldn't ignore it any longer. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The whispering voices, the way they had haunted me throughout the night, still echoed in my mind. As the sun rose over the jungle, casting long shadows across the village, I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out what it was. I had to understand why the voices had called to me. I decided to ask the villagers. They had lived here for generations, surrounded by the jungle and its untold secrets. Maybe they knew something. Maybe they could explain what I had heard. As I walked through the village, I noticed the silence that hung in the air. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence, but rather one of resignation. Like the villagers had long since accepted the strange things that happened here. They had seen it all before. Or perhaps they had simply learned not to talk about it. The people here were wary, cautious, as if afraid to speak of certain things, certain legends that had been passed down through the years. But I had to know. I had to find out what was hidden in the jungle, what lay beyond the stories. I approached one of the elders, an older man with deep lines etched into his weathered face. His eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharpness that made me feel like he could see straight through me. He was sitting by his hut, whittling a small piece of wood, as if nothing could disturb the peace of his world. I cleared my throat, unsure of how to begin, but he didn't seem to need any introduction. "I heard it," I said, my voice low, the whispering, the voices. "Last night. Can you tell me what it is?" The old man didn't look up from his work, but his hands froze for a moment, his fingers hovering over the wood. Slowly, he placed the knife down, his eyes now meeting mine. There was a long pause, and for a moment, I thought he wouldn't say anything. But then, in a voice that was both soft and heavy, he spoke. "You heard it, didn't you?" he said. "The Silent Howl." I nodded, feeling a chill run down my spine. He continued to gaze at me, as if weighing whether or not he should say more. Finally, he sighed, his shoulders slumping slightly, as if the weight of the story was too much for him to carry. "A long time ago, there was a group of travelers, much like yourself. They were young, full of life, excited to explore the jungle and uncover its mysteries. They had heard the same tales we hear today, the stories of spirits, of the restless souls that haunt the forest. But they didn't believe them. No one does until they've heard the howl. They ventured deep into the jungle, far beyond where most dare to go. They sought something, an artifact, a relic that was said to hold power beyond measure. But what they found was far worse than any treasure." He paused, his eyes distant, as if seeing something far beyond the present. I leaned in, waiting for him to continue. "They stumbled upon an ancient ritual," the old man said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "A forbidden one, practiced by an old tribe that once lived in these lands. The ritual was meant to open a doorway to the other side, where the spirits of the dead could pass through. But what they didn't know was that the ritual didn't just open a doorway. It trapped the souls of the living and the dead in a never-ending cycle. The ritual was flawed, corrupted by time, and those who performed it were doomed to remain trapped, neither fully alive nor fully dead. Their souls were lost, forever wandering the jungle, caught between worlds." The old man looked at me, his eyes now filled with a kind of sorrow I couldn't understand. "The travelers who found the ritual," he continued, "didn't understand what they were doing. They thought they could control it, but they couldn't. And when they tried to leave, it was too late. Their souls were trapped, their bodies left behind, rotting in the jungle. They became the lost souls, and now they wander the jungle, their voices forever searching for a way out, but never finding it. I sat there in stunned silence. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The story sounded like something from a nightmare, a tale told around campfires to scare children. But the look in the old man's eyes told me he wasn't lying. This wasn't just a story. It was real. The lost souls, the old man murmured. They are the ones who whisper. They call to anyone who will listen. They try to lure people into the jungle, to trap them like they were trapped. Once you hear the whispers, you are marked. It's only a matter of time before they come for you. The words sent a chill down my spine. I had heard it. I had heard their whispers, and now I understood. The voices I had heard weren't just random sounds carried by the wind. They were the lost souls calling to me, trying to pull me into their world. I didn't know how, but I knew I had become a part of their story now. But why me? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why did they call to me? The old man gave me a long, searching look, as if considering the question carefully. Finally, he spoke. The jungle chooses, he said simply. It chooses those who are destined to become a part of the curse. The lost souls don't call to everyone, only to those who have a connection to their fate. You may have thought you were just passing through, but the jungle saw something in you, something that made you a part of the story. I felt a lump form in my throat. What did he mean by something? Was I in danger? Was it too late to escape? They won't stop calling, the old man added, his voice growing more serious. Once they have you, they will never let you go. They'll keep coming, again and again, until you can no longer tell where their voices end and your own thoughts begin. And when you finally succumb, you'll join them. You'll become one of the lost souls. I stood up, my mind racing. The voice I had heard, the whispering in the jungle, it all made sense now. But knowing the truth didn't make it any less terrifying. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and I could see the danger lurking in the shadows. The old man's words echoed in my ears as I walked away. The lost souls were real. They were out there, and they were waiting for me. But more than that, I realized something even more chilling. I was not the only one they had called. They had been calling for years, and they would continue to call, drawing others into their endless cycle of torment. I had been marked, and there was no going back. The jungle had chosen me, and now I was a part of its dark history. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to know more. I had to understand what was happening, what the voices meant, and why they had called to me. The stories the villagers had told me were disturbing. Yes, but there was something in me, something deeper than fear, that drove me to find out the truth for myself. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something else. Something inside me had been awakened when I heard the whisper. It was like a thread had been pulled, unraveling something dark and ancient that I couldn't ignore. The others had warned me not to go into the jungle, but I couldn't stay behind, locked in the safety of the village. Not when the jungle itself seemed to be pulling me in. It was as if the land was calling me, offering no escape from its pull. As I stood at the edge of the jungle that night, the air felt different, thick with humidity, but also heavy with anticipation. The moon hung low, casting an eerie light across the clearing. I looked back at the village. the small huts barely visible through the trees, their faint lights flickering like distant stars. Then I turned and stepped into the darkness. At first, it felt like any other walk into the jungle. The ground beneath me was soft, and the sounds of the forest, chirping insects, distant animal calls, the rustling of leaves surrounded me. But as I walked deeper, the sounds began to fade, replaced by an unsettling silence. The air grew colder, the temperature dropping as I moved further into the dense forest. The shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally long, curling and twisting around the trees like living things. I couldn't help but feel the weight of the jungle around me, the oppressive presence that seemed to close in with every step I took. The trees were different here. They were thicker, their trunks twisted and gnarled, their branches sprawling like dark arms, blocking out the little moonlight that tried to break through. The path, if there even was one, was barely visible. I had to push my way through the underbrush, feeling the sharp, biting edges of leaves and branches scrape against my skin. Every step I took felt like I was walking deeper into the unknown, and with every step, I could feel the jungle watching me, waiting. I had no idea how far I had gone when I heard it again, the whisper. At first, it was so faint that I thought I was imagining it. I stopped in my tracks, holding my breath, trying to listen. The wind rustled through the leaves. But there was something else, something beneath the sound of the wind. A whisper, soft and insistent. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't an animal or some trick of the night. It was the same whisper I had heard back at the village. The same whisper that had called me in the dead of night. I strained my ears, trying to make out the words, but they were too soft, too distant. I could only catch the faintest murmurs, like voices that were too far away to understand. My heart began to race, and I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. This time, though, the sound was different. It wasn't just one voice anymore. It was many, layered on top of each other. I could hear the voices of men, women, even children. The whispers came from all directions, surrounding me, filling the air, weaving together in a chorus of desperation. "Help! Help us! Please!" The voices were faint, but they were there, clearer now, and each one seemed to be pleading, begging for something, anything. There was an edge of panic in the whispers, a desperation that made my stomach twist. I swallowed hard, my breath shallow. My feet froze to the ground, rooted by the fear that gripped me. It wasn't just a trick of the wind anymore. This was real. The lost souls were here, and they were calling to me. "Help us. Come closer." The voice that spoke this time was louder, more insistent. It felt like it was coming from inside my head, as if the words were echoing directly in my mind. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and I instinctively took a step back, but the ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. It was as if the earth itself was alive, the soil beneath me sinking slightly, as if trying to pull me deeper into the jungle. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had to stay calm. I had to think. These voices, they were the lost souls, the ones that had been trapped by the ancient ritual, the ones that wandered this jungle endlessly, forever searching for a way to escape. I remembered the old man's words, "Once you hear the whispers, you are marked." I had heard them. I was marked. I tried to turn back, but the trees seemed to close in around me. The path I had been following had disappeared. The jungle was no longer the place I had entered. It had transformed into something else. The shadows were darker now, the air heavier. The whispers grew louder, more urgent. It was as if the voices were moving closer, surrounding me from every angle, pressing in from all sides. The ground beneath my feet shifted again, as though it were trying to trap me, to hold me in place. "Come closer. We need you." I couldn't tell if the words were coming from the jungle itself, or if they were coming from the earth below me. But the sensation of being trapped became overwhelming. I took another step back, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing. I had to get out. But every time I tried to turn, the shadows seemed to stretch, pulling me further in, guiding me deeper into the jungle. It felt like the trees were alive, their branches twisting toward me, pushing me, their roots digging into the ground, anchoring me in place. And then, just as the panic began to rise, I heard something else, something that cut through the whispers, something that froze me in my tracks. It was the sound of something moving, something large and heavy, crashing through the underbrush. My pulse quickened. The movement was coming from somewhere in front of me, too close for comfort. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. The sound of something large, moving swiftly through the jungle. Swiftly through the jungle. Getting closer with every passing second. My breath hitched in my throat as the voices grew louder, more frantic. I turned, my legs weak, my mind racing. I needed to run, but the jungle had become a maze, a labyrinth of shadows and twisted trees that seemed to move as I moved. I was lost, completely lost. The whispers surrounded me now, louder than ever, their words indistinguishable in the chaos. It was as if the jungle itself had come alive, and the lost souls were everywhere, closing in on me. My heart was racing, and I could feel the sweat on my skin. The fear, the confusion, the overwhelming sensation of being trapped, it all mixed together, suffocating me. The crashing sound was getting louder, closer, and I knew that whatever it was coming for me. I could feel it. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the sound stopped. The jungle fell silent, the whispers faded, and the earth beneath my feet stopped shifting. I stood there in the dark, gasping for breath, my heart still pounding in my chest. The jungle was still, too still, and for a moment I thought it was over. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The jungle hadn't let me go. It had only just begun. The voices were waiting, and now I was a part of their world. I turned slowly, looking for a way out, but the jungle had swallowed me whole. The jungle felt oppressive, its weight pressing down on me as I stumbled through the undergrowth. The shadows grew longer with each passing moment, the twisted trees and thick vines pulling me deeper into the darkness. My heart was pounding, my breath shallow as I pushed forward, determined to find something, anything that could explain what was happening to me. The whispers still echoed in my ears, a constant reminder that I wasn't alone, that I was never alone. The lost souls were out there, watching, waiting. I could feel their eyes on me, their suffering leaking into the very air I breathed. I had no sense of time, no idea how long I had been walking, but eventually, the dense jungle began to open up, the trees thinning until I found myself standing in a large clearing. It was eerily quiet here, the kind of silence that presses in on your mind, making every breath feel heavy and unnatural. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel a strange heaviness in my chest as I looked around. In the center of the clearing, something caught my eye, a stone altar, ancient and weathered, standing in the middle of a small circle of stones. Dark, twisted symbols were carved deep into the stone, their jagged lines and sharp angles making them seem almost alive, like they were pulsing with an unnatural energy. I didn't know what I was looking at, but I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me as I stepped closer. The symbols seemed to burn into my mind, their meaning just out of reach, as if something inside me was trying to understand them, but it couldn't. The altar was surrounded by a low, flickering fire that burned just enough to cast eerie shadows across the ground. The flames danced and twisted, casting unnatural shapes on the trees and rocks around the clearing, making the whole place feel like it was alive, breathing, waiting for something. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I stood there, staring at the altar. My instincts screamed at me to turn and leave, but some dark pull, kept me rooted to the spot. It felt as though the jungle itself had led me here, as if I had been guided to this exact moment, to this exact place, for a reason. I took another step forward, drawn in by the strange, magnetic force of the altar, and that's when I saw her. She appeared from the shadows, stepping out from between the trees, like a figure pulled from a nightmare. At first, I thought it was just the flickering light of the fire playing tricks on my eyes, but then I saw her clearly. A woman, dressed in ragged clothes, her hair tangled and matted against her skull. Her skin was pale, almost ghostly, and her face was twisted in anguish, her eyes hollow and sunken, like the very life had been drained from her. She moved slowly, almost gracefully, but there was something unnatural about the way she glided through the clearing, as if the earth itself could not hold her weight. I froze, my body locked in place, unable to look away. Her gaze landed on me, her eyes wide and empty, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The air around me seemed to thicken, the atmosphere heavy with something dark, something ancient. I could feel the weight of her stare, as though it was pressing down on me, suffocating me, and I instinctively took a step back, my feet dragging through the soft earth. But I couldn't move fast enough. She was already there, standing just a few feet in front of me, her presence overwhelming. I could smell the decay on her, the stale, rotten scent of something long dead, the smell of the forgotten. She opened her mouth, and the words she spoke were not in any language I recognized. It was a guttural, harsh sound, like a chant or an incantation. The words tumbling from her lips with an unnatural cadence. I couldn't understand what she was saying, but I didn't need to. The very sound of her voice made my skin crawl, like the air itself was vibrating with power, dark and malevolent. The jungle seemed to grow still around us, as if even the trees had gone silent in fear of what was about to happen. And then, without warning, the ground beneath me began to tremble. At first, it was just a slight shaking, something that I could have easily brushed off. But it quickly escalated. The earth shuddered violently, and I stumbled, barely catching myself on the altar. The trembling intensified, the ground shaking beneath me like an earthquake, and I could feel the pulse of something ancient, something alive, deep below the surface. The fire at the altar flickered violently, the flames dancing wildly, casting terrifying shadows that seemed to take on a life of their own. I looked at the woman again, my heart hammering in my chest. Her face was a mask of sorrow, her expression one of eternal pain, as though she were trapped in a nightmare that she could never escape. She continued to speak in that strange language, her words now rising in intensity, as if they were calling to something beyond the veil of this world. The earth continued to tremble, the sound of the jungle growing louder, more chaotic, as if the spirits of the forest were awakening, responding to the ritual being performed before me. Suddenly, the woman's eyes locked onto mine. There was a moment of stillness, a breathless pause, before she whispered something in a voice so soft, so chilling, that it cut through the air like a blade. "They are never at peace. Neither will you be." Her words sent a jolt of fear through me, and for a split second, I felt the weight of her meaning, the depth of the curse that hung in the air. I knew that she wasn't just speaking about the lost souls. She was speaking about me, about my fate. Her words echoed in my mind, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was trapped in this nightmare. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and now I was part of something far bigger, something ancient and unforgiving. The ground beneath me shook again, this time with enough force to send me tumbling to the earth. I hit the ground hard, my body sprawling across the dirt, my head spinning. The fire at the altar flickered and roared, casting dark shadows that seemed to reach out toward me, like hands trying to drag me into the depths of the earth. I could feel the presence of the lost souls now, all around me, their whispers growing louder, their pain reverberating in my bones. Jungle seemed to close in, the darkness pressing against me, suffocating me. I tried to get up, to run, but my body wouldn't respond. It felt like the earth had wrapped its roots around me, pulling me deeper into the ground. The woman's hollow eyes watched me with a mix of pity and rage, as if she knew that I couldn't escape, but there was nowhere for me to hide. The trembling of the ground ceased, and for a moment, the clearing fell into a suffocating silence. But it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that comes before something terrible, something inevitable. The air was thick with the weight of what had just happened, with the ritual that had been set in motion. And in that silence, I knew that it wasn't just the lost souls that were trapped in this cycle of torment. I was too. I had become part of their world, and there would be no escaping it, no way to undo what had been done. The woman's voice, low and hollow, echoed once more. "You are one of us now, and you will never be free." I ran. My legs were trembling with fear, my body begging me to stop. But I couldn't. I couldn't let myself stop. The jungle was closing in on me. The shadows stretching longer, wrapping around me like cold fingers. The air was thick with the weight of what I had just learned, what I had just witnessed. The woman's words echoed in my head. You are one of us now, and you will never be free. I didn't know what she meant, but I could feel it now. In every breath, in every step I took, there was no escape. The jungle had claimed me, and the lost souls were waiting. Voices, those whispers that had once seemed so distant, now screamed in my ears. The sound was deafening, each cry more desperate than the last. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were screams. I could hear them all around me, echoing from every direction, coming from the very air itself. The souls of the lost, trapped in this hellish nightmare, their anguish rising like a tide. I could feel their pain, their torment, pressing down on me with each passing second. Every time I tried to move faster, to escape, the jungle seemed to shift. The trees grew thicker, their branches twisting toward me, clawing at me as I stumbled past them. The path I had followed earlier had disappeared. It was as if the jungle itself had swallowed it whole, leaving me with nothing but darkness. The air grew colder with each step, and I could feel the chill in my bones, the coldness of the souls that wandered these woods. They were close now, so close I could almost feel their cold hands on my skin, their hollow eyes watching me, waiting for me to join them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call for help, to shout out to anyone who might hear me. But the words wouldn't come. My throat was tight, like something was choking me from the inside. It felt as if the jungle itself had wrapped its vines around my neck, cutting off my ability to speak. All I could do was run, my legs carrying me forward as I tried to shake the fear off, as if running faster would somehow make it all go away. But with every step, the voices grew louder. The cries of the lost souls filled my ears, their voices blending into one cacophony of anguish, their desperate wails shaking the very air around me. I could hear their pain, their agony, and it was like they were trying to pull me down into their suffering. The ground beneath me seemed to give way with each footstep, the earth softening, like I was sinking into it, like I was being dragged deeper into their world. I glanced over my shoulder, and for the first time, I saw them. Figures, moving in the shadows, barely visible in the darkness, but I could see them. Their faces were twisted in agony, their features contorted in ways that should have been impossible. Their eyes were wide, hollow, staring into me with an intensity that made my stomach turn. They were watching me, waiting. I knew they were waiting for me to join them, waiting for me to fall, to give in to the terror that was building inside of me. I couldn't tell how many of them there were. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, and every time I looked back, there were more of them, emerging from the darkness, their forms shifting and writhing in ways that didn't make sense. The jungle was alive with them. They were everywhere, The lost souls, trapped forever in the endless nightmare of this cursed jungle. And now, they wanted me too. The ground beneath my feet began to tremble again, and I stumbled, my foot catching on a root hidden in the underbrush. I fell to the ground, the rough earth scraping against my palms. I gasped for breath, the air thick and suffocating, as if the very atmosphere was trying to choke me. My heart was pounding in my chest, each beat a drum of panic. I could hear them now, so close, so close. The voices were deafening, their cries blending together into one long, mournful howl. I tried to stand, but my legs were like jelly. The ground shook again, this time with such force that I thought it might swallow me whole. I looked up, and the jungle had changed. The trees seemed to loom over me, their twisted branches stretching down like dark hands reaching for my throat. The air was so thick with the voices of the lost souls that it felt like the very jungle itself was alive, pulling me into its dark heart. The figures were closer now, moving between the trees, their faces still twisted in pain. I could hear them, their breath ragged, their eyes locked on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. They weren't just watching me. They were waiting for me to give in, to accept my place among them. I could feel the coldness in the air, the chill of death, and I knew that if I didn't get out, if I didn't run faster, I would be lost to them forever. I tried to move, but my feet felt like they were stuck to the ground, as if the very earth was holding me in place. The jungle was suffocating me, its branches twisting around my legs, its roots crawling up to my knees, trying to pull me under. The howls grew louder, the voices screaming in a chorus of torment. I could feel their pain in my chest, as if their agony was sinking into my very soul. The jungle was no longer just a place. It was a prison for the lost souls, and now it was becoming my prison too. There was no escape, no way out. I was trapped, and every breath I took was another step deeper into their world. I managed to pull myself free from the earth, my body shaking with fear. My mind was a blur, my thoughts scattered. But one thing was clear: if I didn't get out of this jungle, I would never leave. The lost souls were close now. I could hear their breath, their footsteps, their cries. They were closing in on me, and I was running out of time. I stumbled through the trees, my heart racing, my breath ragged. Every step felt like it might be my last, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let myself stop. The jungle was closing in on me, the shadows pressing against me, and the howling voices were all around me. They weren't just in the air anymore. They were in my head. I could hear them in my thoughts, their desperate cries echoing through my mind. I had to get out. I had to. But every time I turned, every time I tried to move faster, the jungle seemed to shift, its roots reaching for me, its branches clawing at my skin. The lost souls were everywhere, and the deeper I went, the more I became a part of their nightmare. The howls grew louder. The figures in the shadows moved closer. And I knew, deep down, when I finally made it back to the village, I wasn't the same person who had left. It was as if something had shifted inside me, as if the jungle had claimed a part of my soul that I would never get back. My body felt disconnected, like I was walking through the world as a ghost, detached from everything I once knew. I couldn't sleep. The nightmares followed me, even when I was awake. Every moment of stillness was filled with whispers, low, insistent murmurs that tugged at the edges of my consciousness. The lost souls were still with me. Their presence, that suffocating, oppressive weight, lingered in the corners of my mind, always just out of sight, waiting to drag me back into their world. I tried to tell myself that it was just the stress, just the trauma of what I had seen. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that. There was something more. Something that had marked me the moment I heard their call. I could feel it in my bones, in the very air around me. The jungle had claimed me, and the curse had attached itself to me, just as the villagers had said it would. It wasn't just a story. It was real. And now, I was part of it. The villagers weren't surprised when I returned, but there was a certain sadness in their eyes. It was like they already knew what had happened to me. They spoke to me with quiet voices, not out of fear, but with a kind of resigned understanding. They said the lost souls never let anyone leave once they had heard their call. Once you're marked, there's no escaping it. The curse follows you, hunts you down, and eventually it claims you. They told me I had become part of their world now, that there was no going back. I didn't understand it fully at first, but the more they spoke, the clearer it became. The jungle doesn't let go. It never does. And the lost souls, trapped in their eternal torment, are always looking for new souls to add to their collection. I had heard their whispers. I had felt their presence, and now I was bound to them, just like the travelers before me, lost in the same cycle of agony and despair. The village had become a prison, a temporary refuge, but the jungle would never truly release me. The curse had marked me, and it was only a matter of time before it came for me again. At first, I tried to push it out of my mind. I tried to go back to life as it was before. I ate, I spoke with the villagers, I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, the whispers came back. Soft at first, like a breeze brushing against my ear, then louder, more insistent. It wasn't just in the night anymore. It was in the daylight too, when the wind blew through the trees, when the earth shifted beneath my feet. I could hear their voices, distant but unmistakable. Their cries were always with me, haunting me, reminding me that I was never alone. The jungle had branded me, and there was no escaping the curse. I spent my days in a daze, walking around the village, numb to everything around me. The villagers tried to comfort me, but I could see it in their eyes. They knew there was nothing they could do. They had seen it before. They had seen others who were marked, who had ventured too far into the jungle, who had heard the call of the lost souls. They all came back like I did, changed, broken, and eventually lost to the jungle once again. Some nights, when the wind was just right, I would hear it, the silent howl. It would start softly, like a faint whisper carried by the breeze, and then grow louder, clearer, until it filled the air, drowning out all other sounds. The voices of the lost souls, calling to me, calling for me to join them in their endless torment. The howls were more than just sounds. They were feelings, emotions that seeped into my skin, burrowing deep into my soul. The anguish, the despair, the longing for release. I could feel it all, and it was suffocating. I would lie awake, my body frozen in terror, my heart racing as the howls echoed in my mind. It felt like the jungle itself was pulling me back, like the earth was reaching up to claim me, dragging me deeper into its dark heart. And yet, despite the fear, I couldn't stop myself from listening. The whispers had become a part of me, just as the curse had. I couldn't ignore them. They followed me in my dreams, in my waking moments, their voices weaving in and out of my thoughts. Sometimes, they sounded like my own voice, as if the jungle was trying to consume me completely, to turn me into one of them. The lost souls were always near, always waiting. I could feel their presence. Even when I couldn't hear their voices, their eyes were on me, watching, waiting for me to make the final step, to surrender to the call. I couldn't escape. I couldn't outrun them. The village, the people, the safety I thought I had found, none of it mattered. The jungle was still there, just beyond the trees, always close, always watching. It had marked me, and there was no way out. I don't know what happened to the others. The villagers said they saw me leave the jungle, but I'm not sure I ever truly did. Some nights, I wonder if I'm still there, lost in the endless maze of trees and shadows. Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, convinced that the jungle is still around me, that the whispers are still calling to me. I hear their cries, faint at first, but growing louder as the night wears on. I try to shake them off, but the more I struggle, the harder it becomes to tell where the jungle ends and I begin. It's as if I'm still trapped there, lost among the lost souls, bound to them forever. Some days, I look at the villagers, and I see the same look in their eyes that I saw in the eyes of the others before me. The knowing, the resigned acceptance of what is to come. They've seen it all before. They've seen the curse claim others, and now they're waiting for it to take me too. I try to fight it. I try to hold on to what little of myself is left, but I can feel it slipping away. The jungle is inside me now, and it's only a matter of time before it takes me completely. The whispers never stop. They follow me through the village, through the quiet moments, through the chaos. They're always there, just beneath the surface, a constant reminder that I can never truly escape. Sometimes when the wind picks up, I think I hear them more clearly. Sometimes I think they're calling my name. I know what's coming. I can feel it in the air. The jungle is patient, The lost souls are patient, and when the time comes, they will call for me again. This time, I won't be able to fight it. I'll go to them, willingly or not. The curse lives on. It always will.